Hi, and welcome to the GPJFF in Conversation. I'm Rabbi Tiferet Berenbaum, and we're here with Jess Zeidman, writer, and Olivia Peace, filmmaker of TAHARA. I want to give a quick introduction to these two wonderful people that we have with us. Jess Zeidman, her, is a writer, comedian, and producer living in Brookline, New York. Her work explores toxic female friendship, sexuality, and trauma through comedy. As a queer creator and collaborator, Jess is dedicated to inclusivity and accessibility at every step of production. Her first feature, TAHARA, which she wrote and co-produced, premiered at the Slam Dance Film Festival in 2020 and has gone on to be a part of Outfest, Maryland Film Festival, Frameline, and more. Previously, she has written for the satirical website Reductress and the indie food publication Berenbaum. Jess graduated from Northwestern University with a BA in radio and television film and a minor in theater in 2018. Olivia Peace, they, is a queer Black interdisciplinary artist from Detroit, Michigan, living in Los Angeles. Their artistic style has been referred to lovingly as a hat on a hat, but like in a good way, you know? They are heavily informed by hip-hop, B-movies, and a family history of bipolar disorder. They believe that style helps to facilitate agency in people, and so they set out to create work that's replete with style. After garnering critical and institutional praise for their 2017 short film Pangea, Olivia landed a fellowship with the Sundance Institute in the year-long Ignite Fellowship program. They spent 2019 working on their feature film debut, TAHARA, while still a full-time MFA student at USC. TAHARA premiered in January at the 2020 Slam Dance Film Festival to rave reviews. Currently, Olivia is hard at work putting together their next feature film. Olivia remains committed to discussing and exploring critical imagination and radical optimism in the face of loss and change. They believe that in order to discuss the turmoil of what's going on outward, one must look inward. And so their works look inward, often in some mashup form of animation, and always with subtitles. So welcome to you both.
Hello.
Thank you. Hello.
So the first thing I'd like to know is, how did this partnership between you two start? How did you come to be working together?
Totally. Good question. I'll start, and then Olivia, I'll kick it to you. I wrote TAHARA as a film student at Northwestern University, and I had finished like a pretty solid draft of the script when I was about to graduate, and I was a huge fan of Olivia. Olivia was a few years older than me at school, and I had seen their work, and I'm not a director. I'm primarily a writer and a producer, and I was looking for someone whose directorial vision would sort of align with what I wanted to do with this script. So I messaged Olivia on Facebook, and they sent me their email, and then I did not copy and paste it correctly. So I sent them the script in an email, and then I never heard back. And I was like, okay, it's a pass, that's fine. And I thought, it's not gonna happen. And then all of the summer of 2018, one of my co-producers, Dosh Gorin, was like, let's try Olivia one more time, just confirm this isn't for them, and then we'll like keep seeing if we can find somebody else. So Dasha got the correct email, sent the script over, and then Olivia gave it a read.
I essentially read the script by projecting it on a wall in my apartment of my roommate. And we did just kind of a live read back and forth. And I got to the scene where Hannah pops a zit in the mirror. And suddenly I had all these ideas for how this needed to be shot, and we need to see the zit, and we need to see it burst. And so it kind of went from this very theoretical, maybe I'll see if I do this, to suddenly I had all these ideas, which I then brought to Jess, and Jess just said yes to all of them. And then we kind of went from there.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Olivia, you said in an article that it was important for you to have representation of Jews of color in this movie. Can you speak a little bit about why that's important for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just part of my lived experience growing up. I went to high school in an area in Michigan, shout out to West Bloomfield, that's has a huge Jewish population. And I knew a lot of Jewish people of color. And so I think it just kind of dawned on me in the like during the research phase for like coming on as a director of this film, that that's just not something that had been brought to film very much. So I wanted to bring it here. And I mean, as a Black person, I was like, what do I know other than like the Black teenage experience? So it just kind of made sense for me. Yeah, and then we got some really great actors that also came out too once we started casting, and then kind of took it from there.
Jess, the Sidor scene, the Sidor kiss scene at the funeral was like everything. I had to rewind that back and watch it. So I'm wondering how much of the Hebrew school experience portrayed in this movie mirrors or is influenced by your own Hebrew school and or Jewish youth experiences.
Absolutely, a lot of it. So I didn't go to Hebrew like day school. I went to secular like public education, but I went to Hebrew school after school. I went to Hebrew school 3 times a week at Temple Bethel, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday mornings. And I grew up going to Hebrew school in a very small classroom. Hebrew schools right now are not having huge enrollments. My sister was working at a Hebrew school before this, and we would talk about this, but I had never seen that sort of American Jewish Hebrew school representation before of like all those things, like kissing the Sidurim, or like having those friends that are like, we don't go to school together, but we are like classmates. So I was really interested in exploring that sort of world because it meant so much to me having all these people in my life that I considered a peer, but I didn't know very well. And I think as a filmmaker, I'm really interested in how people relate to one another. I think that's like a really powerful thing. And I also was raised in such a Jewish household that like, that's a way I related to people was through my faith and through that community. So yeah, it was pretty directly derived. The story, not true or based on any sort of like facts of my life, but the setting very much so, to the point that like we filmed the movie at my childhood synagogue, Temple Bethel in Rochester, New York. And that's where I went to Hebrew school, in the classroom where we filmed and in the sanctuary where I was bat mitzvahed.
That's great. That's amazing. So you'd mentioned that, the setting, the plot for the movie is not, based in reality. And the plot is so interesting. It's like, where did this idea come from?
Okay, I think I had a lot of intense friendships growing up, so I think I was interested in exploring that, and ultimately I really wanted to make a movie that was sort of set in a synagogue that was about people that I sort of knew. I feel like I hadn't seen a lot of I'd been reading a lot of like Jewish American short stories and that sort of thing, and I'd been working on other projects about my grandparents were both Holocaust survivors, and I was trying to work on a project about them being displaced after the war and finding each other. And these were things that were so huge above me in a way that I was like, I'm working through these things, but I'm not there yet. And I was like, have I ever seen anything that's about like my Jewish experience? Because I feel like the few like pieces of like media or literature I'd known are all about like bar bat mitzvahs or like something that's very like a serious man, which I like those pieces of media quite a bit, but those don't relate to the world and the sort of Judaism that I grew up in. And I love coming of age movies. So I really wanted to make something of that vein. Like I really was just like, oh, that's what I am inspired by. So that's what I'm kind of working toward.
Nice. So I'm curious, in which characters you both see your high school selves?
That's a good question. I think I know Jess's answer to this as the writer. I mean, I think initially, like as we were looking at rewrites and as we were filming, like I saw myself the most in Carrie, and especially in her like unwillingness to kind of go along with the script of the day and her sort of challenging authority and everything. But albeit honestly pretty politely up until the very end there. But in the edit, I think is where I found Hannah, and I was like, oh, this is someone who though she's acting in this sort of mean girl bully way, like this is someone who really desperately just wants control and who feels out of control. And I don't know, who's kind of like leaning on this friend in a way that I think we can all relate to, especially in high school, where we learn how to set those boundaries and respect boundaries. So I guess, you know, both of our leads, I see myself in a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I feel like I've said this before, but I sort of see myself, like parts of my personality in sort of the three main people. I would say that's Carrie, that's Hannah, and that's also Samantha, whose funeral they're attending. I sort of think I definitely had relationships where I felt like I was the bully and I was sort of like kind of maybe taking advantage of someone's friendship. And I definitely have some where I feel like I was being taken advantage of. And then I also feel like a lot of times I felt sort of misunderstood. Like I have a lot of memories of being a teenager and sort of feeling like no one understands the emotional pain and tumult I'm going through. And I'm sort of, I definitely had a sense of wanting to know what people would say about me, which drives a lot of the action in the film, is sort of this idea of another person. And I think a lot of times people want to, you know, attribute a lot to something that is so much bigger than themselves, because it's like, what else can we do but try to understand? But I think that's like when you don't even know yourself, like what are you even guessing at?
I loved the ending and how it just lingered a little bit. I thought that was really great. So I'm curious, what do you want viewers to take away from this film?
I think like leaving that ending shot as long as possible was really important to me. To the point of I think we were only able to get like one good take of it because Rachel walked so far away. So I think like with a film like ours, like often the credits, you know, it ends and the credits roll, and people are like walking out and everything. And I think I wanted to create some intentional time for people to think about what they've seen and to sort of process all of it all the way. So I think there's a lot about this film that could be considered like a comedy, right? Like there are a lot of really funny moments, but I think the heart of it is something that I don't know, if people take some time, like could really shift the conversation, I think, in how we talk about friendships. So all that to say, like, I hope that people feel seen by the movie. Like, I hope that we've gotten some very sweet messages from teens about, you know, how they saw themselves, I think, especially in Carrie, and use this film as sort of a, I don't know, like a, like seeing your story in a friend and feeling like you should stand up for your friends, so you stand up for yourself, like in retrospect. So I hope that for the film.
Yeah, I feel very similar. Also, thank you. Olivia and I both are like big fans of the super long walking away ending, but some people are like, why didn't this just end? And I'm like, if she could walk for 5 more minutes, I'd be like, go too. No, I agree. I think something I've been thinking about a lot as we've been on, you know, these festivals and had people like watch the movie and talk about the movie, is that I want people to sort of, not normalize is not a term I super love, but like I want people to know that when you have something happen with a friend, it's impactful. Like it's as much as a romantic relationship or a family relationship. It is a sort of deep thing that happens. And as somebody who has like had and lost really deep friendships before, I think it's important sometimes to see that and know that like you're not alone if something like this happens. Like this happens to people and it's unfortunate and it's a part of growing up, but it's not something that's like, it can feel heavy. It can feel like a long walk away, you know? And I think it's sort of nice to have that image to feel.
Part of the young human condition. So, you know, speaking of young, you're both fantastic artists. What advice do you have for young people who are hoping to explore their own identity and their own passions through art?
And I always like to be really intentional with this one because I feel like people are like, just do it, just go out.
No, I'm like really chewing on it. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, I think be brave. Like, be brave in like what you choose to talk about. Like, I think when I first started writing stuff, I think I thought like, oh, I need to adhere to some genre standard and I should make a film like the ones that I like to see already that are already made. But I think what I love about this project is it is so specific, you know, like this really came from Jess's heart. And I think that that's what people are connecting to, as well as like the really bold choices we made and like how we decided to tell the story, how we chose to cast it and shoot it and animate it and all those things. So yeah, be brave and have your editor on set if they can come. That saved us so much time and money, having our editor on set, just like live editing the film as we shot it each day. So yeah, 2 pieces of advice.
Yeah, those are great. I agree with be brave, take risks. My big one these days has been like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Really, like, and you can also admit that you don't know what you're doing. I think it's taken me a long time, Olivia can absolutely attest to this, to be like, I don't know what I'm doing. And like, you don't need to not be like, don't panic, but like, don't panic. It's a lot of people don't know what they're doing or didn't know what they were doing at the time. But like the way they learned what to do was by asking someone for help. And I think a lot of times, especially as a young artist and a young person in general, we have access to so much information that I think it can be scary to ask for help because it's like, oh, you could just Google it, like you could just look it up. But it's like, no. It's good to ask people for help. It's good to have a conversation. So like look to people you admire, see what they've said before, or try to figure out a way to talk to them and say like, this is what I'm working on. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start, or I don't know how to finish. That's been a big part for us. And it's a good way to just like sort of feel more grounded in the fact that you're a person in the world. You're not just someone looking something up online.
Yeah, and that also helps to build community too. Like I think now we have this really beautiful community around this film, and all of that came from like asking for it and accepting help.
Yes,
But you don't,
absolutely.
yeah, you don't get that when you try to work on your own. So yeah, that was a good piece of advice, I think.
Olivia, I read about the Indefinite Village Artists Collective. So I'm curious, what is it and what need do you see it filling in the artist landscape right now?
Ooh, okay. I love these questions. So Indefinite Village is an artist collective that I'm a part of. We are a pro-Black, anti-ableist artist community. And we just make really cool stuff. Like it's just me and my friends making cool stuff. And I think putting people whose work usually is on like the margins of the margins, like as our core. So a lot of the stuff we're working on now is interactive pieces, but we also have some films. And yeah, I think it's what we were just talking about. It's like creating a space for people to come and ask for help and say like, hey, I need this equipment on this day. I don't have any money, or hey, I need some people to crew for me. And it's also people who kind of like hold you accountable, I think, so that you actually finish your work in the manner that you set out to make it in. And yeah, I think I am very interested in sort of like divesting a lot of my time and energy away from I don't know, from like the structures I think that we normally think we have to take part of in the filmmaking world. So I don't know. I think that there can be this sort of like race of people trying to all apply for the same grants or the same fellowships and all that. And that's fine and well and good. And I've definitely benefited from those things before. But there's something I think really special about just building with your community and teaching new, especially like young people, how to make the stuff that they want to make. Yeah.
Well, I just have really one last question, and that's what projects are you both currently working on, and what can we look forward to seeing next from you?
Cool. I'm just writing and reading as much as I can. I'm just trying to like really take, this film has been such a whirlwind. I don't know what else to say. It's been so much, and in good ways and harder ways. And I think right now I'm just trying to like I'm trying to work on some ideas for a TV show. I'm trying to write another film, but I'm mostly just really trying to recuperate and just kind of grow as an artist in person. I feel like I told Olivia this before on another one, but like I'm growing a garden in my backyard, and that's sort of like my main energy focus. It's just like seeing how my plants are doing. So that's kind of my big project. So I don't know how many people can see that, probably just me, but that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, wow. I guess so. One, I am in grad school right now, still at USC, in their interactive media and games division. So now we're like kind of shifting from midterms into finals. But on top of that, like I do have a new feature film that we're starting to take out and a show that I'm really excited about. And yeah, I think just try to make time to rest and like see people. This has been such a tumultuous year, but we're so grateful for opportunities like this to like speak to community and like come and share the film even virtually. But we wish we could be there in person.
Thank you. Thanks so much for making time in your schedule for this.
Thank you.
Yeah, you asked really great questions. This is super fun.
Yeah, this is a good one.